Today, I'm chatting with Jenn Thatcher, who left a successful career as an international artist to found Zebra. Jenn believes her children were victims of dirty products and a system that is designed to trick consumers. Her son Jack's diagnosis of a brain tumor made her even more vigilant at researching every single ingredient in the products her family was using. She realized that the products are really not always as natural as they seem, and she decided if she wanted something truly safe and high performing, she was going to have to create it herself. And this is how Zebra was born. Jenn's faith and love of country is woven into Zebra. She says that her products and the ingredients in her products are black and white, just like the Bible and the Constitution. Zebra is a non-toxic, freedom-loving brand who answers to no one but the creator himself, and I loved our conversation with her. It was not only moving, but very informative and broke a lot of my original thoughts around toothpaste and deodorant and non-toxic products. Zebra is different from so many other brands on the market, and the ingredients that Jenn chose for her products are very intentional. I personally use Zebra toothpaste and deodorant. I love the mint toothpaste and the alpha scent deodorant. I have noticed a huge improvement in my own oral health, and I even have my son, my toddler, who's about to be 3 years old, using the coconut flavor. He said the mint was a little too spicy for him, so I got him the coconut, and I just really feel confident, especially after my conversation with Jenn, around using Zebra in my family and for myself. So let's dive into this conversation that I have with Jenn. Welcome to the Trust Issues Podcast, the show where we question everything society tells us about how to live, work, eat, and be. I'm Erica Auckland, a mom, entrepreneur, and advocate for living life on your own terms. Here we challenge the status quo, from the food we feed our families to the way that we build wealth and well-being. You'll hear unfiltered conversations with everyone from farmers, financial experts, and everyday people who are doing life differently, all with one goal: to help you live healthier, freer, and more abundant. If you've ever felt like there's more to life than following the crowd, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Jenn Thatcher, welcome to the Trust Issues Podcast. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
I am excited to just dive into your story. I think your story of how Zebra was founded is obviously very personal, but very moving and very powerful. And I think something that so many mothers, which is a huge demographic of who listens to this show, will really feel connected with. So, your son's diagnosis of a brain tumor was a pivotal moment in your life. How did that experience ignite your mission to challenge the status quo of the product industry and create Zebra?
Yeah, so I had always considered myself to be like an organic-minded, holistic type mom. So ever since my kids were born, my oldest is 23, I had been doing my best to navigate our food and personal care system, buying organic, spending more money for the more expensive, natural, organic products. And so when my son was diagnosed, the people that knew me, on a personal level, were just so perplexed because they were like, you're the one that does it right. Like, you're the one that's not feeding their kids Twinkies and, feeding them the Ezekiel bread. And, my kids actually used to be embarrassed to have friends over because, we didn't have any good snacks. So,
Wow.
I felt like I had done everything I thought I could do to keep my kids healthy and safe. And so when my son was diagnosed, we were sitting in the ER, and they came back and said he had a mass on his brain. And I just looked at him and I said, buddy, I don't know what this is, but I know that God will use it. And so it was just very much a shock, and then navigating multiple brain surgeons to figure out what this was. They could not explain the location or why it was causing the symptoms. They couldn't tell us if we should or shouldn't do surgery. Some of them said we shouldn't. He could end up a vegetable. Some of them said, definitely do it. He's never going to have a normal life if you don't. And so ultimately we opted for the brain surgery, which was a very long surgery. And the physician came out while he was in surgery and said, I've never seen this before. And he ran upstairs and actually did some research and then came back downstairs while my son was still in surgery. And then post-surgery, he came back to us and said, yeah, I have searched the research. I looked at the medical journals. This is a very rare brain tumor location. The symptoms are so different. I estimate this to be about 1 in 24. So it was that moment that I recognized, like, this isn't genetic. This is definitely something that was caused by something environmental or something, he was eating or drinking or something. So after his brain surgery, I sat down with all the products we were using and just said, I know these are all good because I pay more money for them and they say they're natural, but I'm just going to make sure. And sadly, when I really dove into the ingredients, I felt like I was punched in the stomach.
Wow.
I was paying $12 for toothpaste that I thought was safe, and we were using the natural deodorant, and I looked at these ingredients and I said, these are just not as good as I thought they were. So it was at that moment that I started searching for products that would meet my standards and also products that were effective, because a lot of times the good ingredient products aren't necessarily the most effective products. And so I didn't want to, sacrifice efficacy for safety. You still want to spend your money on products that work. So I just didn't feel like I could find that. And so it was at that moment that Zebra was born.
Wow. What were some of the ingredients that you identified that you were no longer comfortable with, or that you noted, oh, before I may not have looked at this, but now I'm seeing this is something I don't feel comfortable using on myself or my children?
There's a lot of ingredients, but I think in general it was the whole mismarketing and labeling of natural and organic products. So, for example, toothpaste and deodorant are products that we use every day. So when you're putting that toothpaste in your mouth, it can go directly into your bloodstream. When you're putting that deodorant on, it's going right into your lymphatic system. So you want those ingredients to be as pure as possible. So when you're using a natural deodorant, but the deodorant contains fragrance, that can be a whole bunch of chemicals that are under that fragrance umbrella. It's kind of like natural flavors can also be a whole host of ingredients that are under that natural flavors label. So people don't recognize, fragrance can be a really toxic ingredient that they're putting directly into their lymphatic system every day. Even something as benign as baking soda, you can see that on a label and not realize that it's synthetic baking soda or that the baking soda is chemically mined. So Zebra uses water to extract our baking soda from the ground, which costs twice as much, but it's completely pure, versus some of these deodorants that just have baking soda in them. They're not telling you where it's from, but you think baking soda is a natural ingredient, but not necessarily. So you could be using a natural deodorant that's still full of chemicals.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea
Same
about
thing with
that.
toothpaste. There's a lot of toothpaste out there that, of course, if you start with like the mainstream toothpaste that have the foaming agents and the SLS and the artificial colors and flavors, but then you can transfer into the quote natural toothpaste that still have sorbitol, which is an unnatural, artificial sweetener. There was an ingredient that bothered me, which was called propane diol. So that is supposedly a natural preservative, but it's actually a propylene glycol derivative and most commonly sourced from China and most commonly grown on GMO corn. So that's in a very popular hydroxyapatite toothpaste right now. And so those were the ingredients that bothered me. So I started just looking for something more pure and couldn't find it. And so after Zebra was born, I decided, okay, we're going to start with toothpaste and deodorant because those are the things that you use most often, and these are the things that people are using on their children. And I think if I'm being fooled, then the average mother who's trying and spending that extra money on these products is being fooled too.
Wow. So you obviously know your ingredients, and I'm here for this. I love the detail. I love just how much you know. And so when it came to actually formulating for Zebra, what were some of your biggest challenges on creating products that not only are obviously non-toxic and safe, but also high performing? I personally use Zebra toothpaste. I need to get on the deodorant train, but the toothpaste is unreal. I'm obsessed with it. I just finished our first bottle. My husband just literally told me you need to go and order another one. So I'm going to be doing that this week, but it performs. And so what was some of your biggest challenges in being able to find ingredients that could do both?
So I went into this industry not, I think, having a background in formulation, which I think was kind of a double-edged sword. But I will say when I first started formulating toothpaste, I was on team hydroxyapatite, 100%. So I have a lot of pushback from people who love this ingredient who are saying, you're just saying no hydroxyapatite because you're selling a toothpaste without hydroxyapatite. And that couldn't be further from the truth because we had spent a year developing a toothpaste with a hydroxyapatite. I thought it was like the best ingredient ever. So we spent a ton of money developing what I thought was the perfect hydroxyapatite formula. But with every ingredient that I put in my products, I wanted to prove to myself why it should be in the product. So even if I was predisposed to think the ingredient was good, I wanted to double check myself. And so I read every piece of research I could about every ingredient, almost to prove to myself why I shouldn't use an ingredient. So I did that with hydroxyapatite. It was that combined with, I started to see moms commenting on Instagram posts and Facebook posts saying that they had been using hydroxyapatite toothpaste and they were seeing an increase in cavities. And so I started seeing that chatter increase, and then I would see the comments deleted because there was a huge marketing campaign behind hydroxyapatite. And so it's like I just had these little red flags that kept going off. And so I started to put those together and say, okay, people are using this and they're reporting more cavities. My family had been using it. We had an increase in cavities. And so I thought something just seems off here. You know, in addition to the story about NASA and Japan and the patent and all of that, which never really made sense to me, I just started really researching why this might not be a good ingredient, because I was not going to put anything in there that I did not feel was beneficial for people's health. So it was through research of reading hundreds of studies, thousands of pages of research. And I never wanted to be the person that was like a specialist on oral care. I'm just a mom with a kid that had a brain tumor. And so I never thought, like, this is what I'm going to be doing, reading, you know, thousands upon thousands of pages on the oral microbiome and how the salivary system works and calcium phosphate bonds and all of this. But that's what it led me to. And that hydroxyapatite is actually working in opposition to our God-created saliva system, which is our first line of defense against cavities. So no one is really talking about that because I don't think anyone has done the research. People say, well, hydroxyapatite is almost bioidentical to our bones. That's true. And our body is made of, 50 to 70% water. But if you put water in the lungs, you can die. So, just because something is similar to our body composition doesn't mean using it in certain ways is beneficial. So, hydroxyapatite is a calcium phosphate bond. So that's very important. So our salivary system actually works to separate calcium and phosphate in the saliva. So we have enzymes that are working to keep these calcium and phosphate ions separate. And the enzymes are coming from food. One of them comes from like red meat. It's called proline. Another one's called stadherin. It's just very interesting. These are God-given systems that are beginning their momentum the minute we start chewing food, and they're working to separate the calcium and the phosphate ions because that's what causes plaque. So then with hydroxyapatite, you're literally just brushing with that, and so it's working in opposition to how God created this remineralizing system to begin in your mouth. And so it's amazing to me because hydroxyapatite, I feel like, was this supposedly hero ingredient, but if you really think about it, God designed our bodies, and we don't need intervention like that to
Wow.
yeah, it just didn't make sense to me. And so the microhydroxyapatite is actually too big to remineralize anything. So that's why there was this whole discussion with the hydroxyapatite companies going back and forth. Is it better nano? Is micro better? Neither of them are better. Micro sits on top of your tooth, so it doesn't actually remineralize, but in x-rays, it looks like it's doing something because it's like your tooth is wearing like a little sweater. So it's sitting on top of your tooth, and people are coming home from the dentist and they feel like, oh my goodness, like my teeth are remineralized, but this is a superficial coating that they have put on their tooth. And so this demineralized tooth is still at risk because nothing has really been done. It's just like wearing a sweater. So this makes sense why these people are seeing an increase in cavities, because they thought their cavity was healed, but it's continuing to demineralize underneath that little sweater on the tooth. And that also makes sense why people are even reporting things like holes in their teeth. You know, kind of where teeth meet each other, people are actually experiencing like little cracks and holes after using hydroxyapatite.
I had been using, before I had discovered you and Zebra, I had been using an nano hydroxyapatite toothpaste. And I noticed an increase in I felt really good about using it because of, it being natural, it being cleaner, it being non-fluoride, which I want to talk about in a moment. But I started noticing like I had a crack in my tooth in the back of one of my molars. And then I also started noting such an increase in plaque. I'd never struggled with plaque ever in my life. And I mean, before I haven't used fluoride in toothpaste for over a decade.
Right.
But, when this whole, like you said, it really did feel like a campaign. Like suddenly, all of a sudden, everyone on Instagram was talking about hydroxyapatite, myself included. I'm like, this is great because we can now remineralize our teeth, and almost just parroting what everybody else has kind of been saying.
I mean, it sounded like the best ingredient ever. Like I was
Yeah.
on the team. I was
I
all
was too.
in. Like
Until I found you, Jen. Until I found you. I feel like
Yeah.
you're the only one who's talking about this. So, you're so high level in your understanding of this, obviously because of the research you've done, because of obviously how invested you were personally. For someone who's listening and, you explained hydroxyapatite so well in terms of how it's like wearing a sweater on your teeth. Is hydroxyapatite the new fluoride? Is this something that is actually, can then in your words, could it be something that you would consider toxic, that we shouldn't be exposing ourselves to because of what it's doing inside of our mouths?
I think it's very detrimental, and I think people that are using it will see the effects eventually, whether it be in a year or 5 or 10 years. But nanohydroxyapatite can actually do what it's advertised to do. I will say I've seen a lot of comments from Zebra users that they had just extreme sensitivity with the nano, and I can't really explain that. But my question would be, why would anyone in the holistic space want to put anything nano in their body? And that's not something I had considered because I had used both the micro and the nano. I was trying to figure out which one was better, like which one, works better. But nano does not belong in a human body. I mean, it bioaccumulates in organs. It can actually, when exposed to graphene under a microscope, nanohydroxyapatite self-assembles, which I think is a very strange, little interesting fact. And the fact that this was, introduced during or right before COVID, I just think is very interesting. But we don't wear nano sunscreen in the holistic community. We know that can, penetrate deeply into the cells. And so putting that directly into your bloodstream via your gums, it's just like, it doesn't make sense. And so I've had a lot of pushback from people who aren't Zebra customers yet saying, show me the research. And the research is hard to find. And you can find research to correlate anything you want. on the internet. So there's nano-hydroxyapatite toothpaste companies that are waving around their tooth studies showing that their particular nano-hydroxyapatite doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. Well, why in the world would you even want to consider using something that could potentially cross the blood-brain barrier? You're using a study that's potentially funded by the maker of the ingredient that is saying it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. And even if it doesn't, we know nano still bioaccumulates in the body, in the organs and the tissues.
Wow. What do you believe contributed to your son's tumor?
I have no idea. So, I mean, it could have been many things. But what I do know is that I did the best I could, and I still felt that day in the emergency room that I failed my son. And I never want to contribute in any way to another family having the moment that we did or having the journey that we have. So, I've had people, like I said, say, she's just trying to sell her toothpaste. It's not that. I'm trying to create a community of moms that are willing to question the status quo, to look into their products, not just Zebra. I don't care if anybody uses Zebra, deodorant, toothpaste, whatever. I'd rather them make their own toothpaste at home. I want to educate people, and I want people to stop trusting the studies. I want moms to start trusting themselves. I want them to start trusting their intuition. I want them to start thinking about what someone might have invested in the outcome of the narrative that they are serving up to people. Mm-hmm. So, if you've got everybody on Instagram saying something is great, and you've got CNN saying something is great, and you've got the mainstream media and all these major publications that are never interested in holistic health trying to serve you up a certain toothpaste, I think that might be because they knew the holistic community wasn't going to get on board or hadn't been on board with the fluoride train, and so they had to find a replacement.
Wow. And I will say this because I'm in the process of formulating products for a company I'm starting, and just hearing you talk about what you've gone through in terms of research, reading journals, even like you said, spending an entire year of formulating a product that you ended up not even using. I'm here to back you up and say, no, there's so much work that goes into developing a product like that, which also, because of the quality of your ingredients, I'm sure the margins aren't, what other companies are.
Oh, they're not. They're not at all. And so people ask us all the time, why aren't you on Amazon? We can't afford to be on Amazon because even though our toothpaste is more expensive, our ingredients are twice as much as the companies that are sourcing their ingredients from China. So your USA-made toothpaste is most certainly using ingredients from China, and that's something we're very committed to not doing in our toothpaste or deodorant. We do our best to find the purest form of an ingredient, and that costs more, and we don't care.
Well, let's hope and pray that this next administration can, do something that benefits you as a company and a brand that is sourcing here in the United States. That's my hope for you. Can you talk to me about your ingredient selection process then? So obviously we're talking about hydroxyapatite. You've also mentioned a little bit of fluoride. If you want to touch on that, I think that would just be helpful for someone who's listening and maybe they're still using fluoride in their toothpaste and they didn't even know what hydroxyapatite is and why you're not using those ingredients and what you're using alternatively in Zebra, in the specific toothpaste, and why it's so beneficial and why you chose them after all the research you've done.
Sure. I've always been a no on fluoride, actually for over 25 years. So I started using a non-fluoride toothpaste in high school. Fluoride is interesting. It actually can do good things for the teeth, but my my predisposition is to ask, what else is it doing? So although it can do good things in the mouth, it can calcify the pineal gland. It's also classified as a neurotoxin. So the good does not outweigh the bad to me. So what I had always struggled with, and I think many who didn't use a fluoride toothpaste had struggled with, was the remineralizing aspect. You're using this fluoride-free toothpaste, but there's no remineralizing. It just didn't exist, which is why I think so many of us were so eager to jump on team hydroxyapatite. We thought, oh, finally, we can we can have something that's going to help us prevent cavities. But instead, for many people, and I'm not saying hydroxyapatite does this for everyone. Everyone's mouth is different, but for many people, it is contributing to more plaque. It is actually causing cavities. And so there are going to be some people that, love it and it's not causing the cavities, and I'm very happy for them. But just the research I've done, I can tell that it's not necessarily what everyone thinks it is. As far as formulating the other ingredients, when I would have a call with a manufacturer, it was very interesting. The first question they would ask me was, what do you want your unit cost to be? And I just thought that was the strangest question. And I was always so taken aback, and I would say, what do you mean? What do I want my unit cost to be? My unit cost is going to be determined after we select all the ingredients. But that's not how most companies go about things. Mm-hmm. They go into it with an idea. Okay, I want a stick of deodorant, I want a tube of toothpaste, and I want it to cost $5. I said, I don't care what it costs. We'll figure out what the unit cost is after we source the very best, most effective ingredients. And so that got me in trouble with several of my manufacturers. I actually got fired by one of my deodorant manufacturers because, I don't know, they called me whimsical, because I wanted them to source essential oils from a farmer in France, and that was ridiculous. He doesn't have a cell phone. He was hard to reach, and so communicating with my little farmer in France was not something they wanted to do. But they're used to sourcing everything with their, huge vendors in China, and Zebra was not on board with that. So I had to constantly be working behind the scenes to have backups for my backups for manufacturers when they got tired of me.
Wow. Okay, so can you briefly talk about, because we've talked so much about toothpaste, deodorant is such a big conversation for women within, obviously you mentioned lymphatic system. I mean, we are applying our deodorant close to our breast. It's a product that I think a lot of people are also wanting to find an alternative, a cleaner solution. But the problem is it going to perform? And so when it came to the deodorant side of things, what were the things that you were not willing to use or not willing to compromise on so that you could create something clean but also effective?
Well, we didn't want really anything artificial. We didn't want parabens. We didn't want aluminum. Aluminum, obviously, I think is one of the biggest problems in deodorant because it's actually stopping your body from performing its natural detoxing process. So we are made to sweat. We are made to expel toxins from under the arms. And when you're putting that aluminum in there, you're actually stopping that process. So you are clogging up one of the biggest ways that your body expels toxins. And so that's one of the issues that a lot of customers have when they switch to a natural deodorant. And there is a detox process, and it is not pretty if you have not been using any natural deodorant. Like, I almost wish sometimes that people go from like a sort of natural deodorant to Zebra versus going from a pretty toxic deodorant to Zebra, because Zebra, in my opinion, is the cleanest deodorant out there. So if you're going from the super toxic to the cleanest deodorant out there, there is a detox process, and you will smell bad for a little while. But I always tell people that's actually a good thing. It shows how much toxicity is in your body and is coming out. And it's not forever, but it is truly a process.
I will say this, I just had my second son, And during my first postpartum season, I had switched to a more non-toxic deodorant at the time. And I had such, and they always associated it with, postpartum and, the hormonal change. But I just felt like it was so off because I had such BO.
Yes.
And I was like, I smell. I mean, this is not cute, but this is just what my reality was. I switched. I don't use what I used then. And this postpartum, I haven't had any of those issues. Now I'm like, you saying what is in Zebra and it's the cleanest. I'm like, I can't wait to try the product. But I think that we've constantly in our world, like we've just constantly said these symptoms or these things that we are experiencing, like we just kind of chalk it up to like, well, that's just something that happens and let's just like cover it with a Band-Aid almost. It's just like, let's kind of ignore it. It's like, well, what is the smell actually telling us? Like you're saying,
Yes.
that's a good sign. And I think that's where, why trust issues, the podcast even exists. It's like, let's start asking ourselves these questions of, why are my teeth having cracks and holes when I'm using a product like this? Or why do I smell terribly if I try a clean deodorant for one day? Like, what is my body trying to tell me? My body is innately intelligent. It knows what it needs. And if we give it what it needs, it can perform pretty well. So that's why I think I'm just so obsessed with your platform and what you guys have created, because it just allows our bodies to do what they're meant to do.
Absolutely.
And
that's Zebra. We're black and
yeah.
white. The ingredients that are black and white, like the Bible and the Constitution. So we're very forward in our brand values. And we believe that God created our bodies perfectly. So, yes, we use deodorant because we live in a modern society and we use toothpaste. But, we want to get as close to, benefiting the systems that he designed as possible. And so we live in this Amazon Prime society where we want these immediate results, but we're not willing to do the work to keep our bodies healthy. So I've had customers, a handful who've switched to Zebra and said, I just switched from aluminum deodorant and I smell too bad. I cannot continue this. I'm actually thinking of switching over. And our customer service is very knowledgeable about the detox process. And we don't care. We don't care if you don't want to use Zebra anymore. But our customer service team will do the best they can to educate that person on what is going on with their body. And even if they go and switch to a different natural deodorant, we just hope and pray that they don't go back to that aluminum deodorant. So we try to support them through that detox process and recommend other products, removing those heavy metals by using cilantro drops or, clay masks under the arms to, try and pull those heavy metals out. That's a great thing to do. But it is a process, and, we just pray that people don't give up on themselves. Like, you're giving yourselves the gift of health. And then there's other people who say, like, your deodorant's too expensive, it didn't work very well. And this is a very small percentage, but I'm just bringing these out because in case other people have felt this way when they transition to a natural deodorant. And again, I don't care if it's Zebra. I want everyone to be using a natural deodorant, just not the aluminum ones. Don't give up. Don't give up because natural deodorant's more expensive, but so is chemotherapy. And, these, are you willing to invest the few extra dollars on the toothpaste with the pure ingredients and the deodorant with the pure ingredients, or do you want to invest later in intervention when your health is failing? And so we've walked that road, and so I truly, my heart is for people to not walk that road too.
Wow. My question for you is, this is, I think, on the heart of so many Americans now, especially with just this conversation of make America healthy again. And I think so many people are asking questions, and I just see people on Instagram, I use Instagram as a gauge because I think it's a place where a lot of moms gather and they're talking about their kids or what works for them or finding resources that, I think about my mom when she raised me that wasn't available to her at the time, right? So I think that it's a double-edged sword and it's a beautiful gift that we have access to that. But, I think also with that comes so much overwhelm with, gosh, I have to change everything. Like, not only is it my deodorant, my toothpaste, it's also, well, I was using this crunchier toothpaste and it's actually not the right one. Or there's so many people who say this idea of living a non-toxic or cleaner lifestyle feels very overwhelming to them.
glad you
I
brought that
love,
up.
well, what did you say?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Let's talk about it because, you know, I think the perspective of what you just said is really at the end of the day why I go the extra mile. I do the things I do with my children because, yeah, I don't want to look down the road and say I could have done better or something happens when my kids get sick or, you know, all those things can happen. We live in a toxic world, unfortunately. So what would you say to someone who's feeling that overwhelm? Where do they start? What do they do? How do they start to make these safer choices? What perspective would you like to lend to them if that's the dialogue that they're having in their mind?
I have a lot of thoughts on this because, you know, there was a time when my daughter, who's 23, was a baby, and I was living in Section 8 housing. And so even back then, I was still trying to do my best, but, you know, you can't afford, I would have laughed at the thought of affording $14 toothpaste back then. But I did my best to navigate what I had. And so, you know, there are options. Making your own toothpaste with coconut oil and baking soda is better than buying Crest at the store. And so there's always options. But I would say, you know, starting with things you use every day is important. Clean water is important. But the sense of overwhelm I've seen sometimes on Instagram, like you said, where people almost want to wave the white flag and say, I'm done, it's too hard. I would say that is just a defeatist attitude because when you know better, you do better. And we don't know everything. But as a mother, I think we always want to be doing the best we can for our children. And if you don't have kids, you want to be doing the best you can for the people you love and for yourself. And if that goalpost is constantly changing, then so be it. Move with it. My husband gets annoyed with me because I'm constantly like, oh, we don't do that anymore. Can you stop cooking in olive oil? You're heating that up too high. Let's use butter. I mean, I'm constantly learning more and changing, but it's what's the goal? The goal is health. And so if the goal is health, it's worth it. What's more valuable than that? And so I would say give yourself grace. There's so many free things that can improve your health. Taking a walk, being in the sun, clean water, you know, getting off the phone. If all the information that Instagram is giving you on your unhealthy lifestyle is causing you anxiety, then remove yourself from that platform for a little while. But I would say if we just think about using products that are more in line with, you know, what God created, whole foods, less processed foods, and focus on products we use every day, it shouldn't have to be overwhelming. It shouldn't have to be. But the American system, you know, has been rigged against us for a long time. And so it's like some people have thought for a long time, well, you know, the government had my best interest at heart. I'm okay. All these products that are in my grocery store are fine. We live in the best country in the world, so obviously our products and food is superior. In fact, my husband, who served in the military for 20 plus years, came home from a deployment back in 2016, and he would get frustrated with me because our grocery bill was so high, and he would say, you know, you don't understand. There's other countries that are so poor, and we have so much, so any food in our grocery store is good. And I would just say, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. And I think there's a lot of things in our food that are making us sick. But, you know, those processed foods are more expensive. If you navigate the outer aisles of the grocery store and you make things at home, that's a huge way to save money. We don't really eat out in our family. We have one restaurant that we feel comfortable eating at that, you know, has better meat and no seed oils and whatnot, but we save a ton of money by cooking at home.
The same. We are the same way. We would be really great friends in real life because we are the same way in that, like, we do a lot of that work at home because it's like you said prior, it's just so much more worth it to have your health. It's so much more worth it. I mean, not only just the peace of mind, but it also, you start to notice. And so if you're listening and you're feeling overwhelmed, I promise if you try what Jenn is saying, if you try what we're talking about today, you will start to feel so much better. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have more energy to show up for your family. You're going to have more energy to do the things that you need to do in your life, to go to work, all the things. And you start to feel like, how did I ever live like that before? And how did I ever function like that before? Because really, like, you're a completely new person when you choose this lifestyle.
You are, and I mean, I used to work at Bath and Body Works in high school, and now I
Oh my
walk
gosh.
down if I go to a conventional grocery store, which is not much, but sometimes I just run there to grab something. If I walk down like past the laundry aisle where like the fragrances, like you can smell them from a mile away, I'm literally like gagging. So
Yep.
you become averse to the processed foods. You become averse to smelling the fragrance when you are, putting the more natural things in your body.
100%. If I'm walking, my husband and I walk in the park and someone passes us, we can smell their laundry detergent on them. We're like, immediate headache, like how, it's so wild. I'd love to ask you, I just like, I love to see the heart behind Zebra, like the values of the company, the lengths at which you've gone to create these products. In your experience, what has been the most rewarding moment for you since launching Zebra?
I can't think of like a particular moment, but Alex Clark had asked me on the Culture Apothecary podcast why I chose to get political. And back then, so when I filmed that podcast, I think it was early October, maybe late September, and I hadn't gone full political yet. Zebra is black and white like the Constitution and the Bible. And so that is what we believe as a brand. We believe in God, we believe in freedom, and we believe in being transparent with our ingredients. So that made perfect sense for the name of our brand. But I think when I decided to rip the Band-Aid off and just be completely who I am personally as a brand, which is not normal. Most brands are faceless brands. And so I was really excited to start Zebra because I wanted to be a faceless brand. I had been in the art world and I was the face of my art brand. And so we're pretty private in our family. And I was just excited to have a brand where I was not really involved or forward facing. And my branding and marketing team that I was working with for the past 2 years, they've kind of walked with me through all of this, and they just knew my story, and they said, like, you have to be part of the brand. Like, your story is the reason for the brand. And so I really didn't want to do that. So it was like in phases where, okay, I'll be the face of the brand. I'll tell my story. I agree. It's important. I want people to understand the heart behind this brand and why we're different. And I never want people to walk that road that we've walked. So that all makes sense. But, navigating this election season, and I've always been a political person. I started on my first campaign at 9 years old. My grandmother was a state senator who ran for governor in a state I won't name. But I started young. And so I've been a conservative my whole life. And so watching this political season, and, I worked behind the scenes on several campaigns in Texas. I think the minute we were called garbage was the final straw for me. And I just finally decided, you know what? I'm just going to go full political. So I said, we are the first and only America First toothpaste and deodorant brand in America, and I'm just going to embrace that. And so I would say the support that I got, so there wasn't like a particular moment, but the support that I got in the community, I think that created with Zebra. And so that's what I wanted to create is we're not a toothpaste and deodorant brand. We're a community of pissed off consumers, like who are just tired. We're tired of it. And so I think people loved seeing a mother who was unafraid to say, like, enough is enough. And this is what we stand for, and we're unashamed, and we won't compromise on anything. And if that aligns with you, then join the herd.
And the herd is joining.
And the herd is growing.
They're joining in droves. Jen, can I ask, how is your son today? After you starting this company, and I'm sure navigating that whole journey with him and gosh, just like sharing, I can't even imagine Zebra existing now without your story and without your son's story. I know that our listeners would just love to know how he's doing today.
So I will say it has been a long journey with our son, and he has never been the same. So our relationship with him has never been the same. He's never been the same as he used to be. So the trajectory that brain tumor and that illness launched for our family was so devastating that it forever changed our entire family. It's hard to get into specifics, but it's very difficult. My whole heart is behind Zebra. It's been an outlet for me to try to create something that will benefit other families so that truly, I hope, our products can help them not have to have something similar happen to them.
Well, I just want to acknowledge you and also just tell you, as a woman who's a believer, and the people who listen to this show to just, I call upon all of you to just send prayers for your family and for this brand to reach who it needs to reach. And also just thank you. Thank you for using this story. You didn't have to. And like you said, you created this to be faceless. And, the irony is now we're, doing a podcast episode together and bringing the story to many more. So I just want to thank you and also just, I think that's what is really a beautiful thing about this community that you are building and that I've experienced myself is while we may not all know each other personally in our personal lives, we do have so much investment in each other's stories because how can you not as a mother? How can you not want to see, not only change on this grand level, but also how can you not want to see each other win and be healthy and whole and happy as families who have very similar values?
Absolutely. We as mothers, care for each other's children.
We do.
So I think creating a community of mothers, who want the best for their children and understand that the best for their children has not always been aligned with what we have been served up in the past and the products that we have had to choose from and the food that, we've been told to eat, I think is just a really beautiful thing. And so I think that's been the best part of Zebra is just connecting with mothers and families and people that feel the same as I do.
Yeah, and there's many of us. With our wrapping up of this episode, I'd love to ask you, what's coming next for Zebra? Can we look forward to any other products or any sneak peeks?
We've got a lot of products in the works, but next, I am so excited about this, is a lip gloss, which I've always been a glossy girl for the lip. I've never done the matte lip thing, no judging, but I love the glossy. And to find a high-performing, super glossy gloss that is also non-toxic is pretty difficult because a lot of the natural type lip glosses out there are kind of waxy and they're kind of matte and they're kind of heavy on like the beeswax or whatever. But ours it's incredible. It's super hydrating, super glossy, so that's coming next.
Sign me up. I'm a gloss girl. Never been a matte girl. I'm like gloss every single day. I'm so here for it.
I am too, and one of the colors is called Maha Red.
Are you kidding?
No, and so the pigments in it, it's like a super light pigment, but it's all from, plants. No,
Wow.
Artificial dyes or anything. So we named it after the mission, Maha.
Amazing. I am so here for it. Well, Jenn, you are amazing. Zebra is amazing. Thank you so much for not only sharing your wisdom, but also your story. Where can our listeners find you? How can they come and purchase Zebra? What's the best place to connect with you?
Well, thank you for having me. It was an honor. So we're on Instagram at zebra.usa and online at yayzebra.com, Y-A-Y, zebra.com.
Perfect. We'll put all of that in the show notes. Jenn, thank you so much for being on the Trust Issues podcast.
Thank you so much. It was so fun. Appreciate you.
There you have it. If you love this conversation and if you want to try Zebra for yourself, check out Zebra on Instagram at zebra.usa. Check out their website as well. That's yayzebra.com. Again, some of my favorite products that I personally use from Zebra are the Alpha scented deodorant. It's the sandalwood scent. It's kind of masculine, but I really love it. And in terms of the toothpaste, I love the mint flavor and my toddler loves the coconut flavor. Next up, I want to try are the toothpaste tablets. I feel like that would be really something great to bring with you on the go. But Zebra is just doing things really differently. And I think that if you try the products, you will also find them really wonderful as well. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Trust Issues podcast. If you love this episode, please make sure that you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. When you leave a 5-star review on the show, it honestly helps us get this message, this type of content to more people who want to live a non-toxic lifestyle. Share this with a friend, and I'll see you next time.